kicking off into some of the questions for the listeners in the audience. What is 01 Exchange? What do you guys do?
So we're a decentralized derivatives exchange supporting cross-collateral, cross-margin. So our goal essentially is to build a SEX but decentralized, like meaning DEX with the support of the order book. And currently we are supporting 5 different perpetuals markets, 6 different collaterals, as well as like we added recently a Power Perpetuals, which I'm excited to talk to everyone about. And basically our platform allows people to trade and speculate on different assets while also enabling leverage.
Nice, that's super exciting. And you guys have been shipping really quickly and getting product out there. So that's been great to see.
Yeah, totally. Same for you guys, I guess. Initially we started out like in everlasting options, like kind of like in the similar space as you guys. Maybe like would be excited to hear like also the side of your story with Zeta, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So from our side, I think we're taking a slightly more traditional route on kind of tackling what has been really popular in traditional finance, which has been dated futures and options. And so we're working on just building like a very fast, very like performant exchange, something that, on the front end, I guess, acts like a CeFi exchange, but then, on the back end actually runs through like decentralized infrastructure like Solana, which is what we want to get to. So building in really good UX and then working on like a really fast chain is kind of paramount to that. And yeah, we basically went live, I would say in January. So we've been out there for maybe like 2 months now, which has been pretty cool. First, we launched like dated options, so you can do calls, puts, buying and selling, and then we also have dated futures if you kind of want to hedge out on that as well. And like volumes have been growing pretty steadily. And then looking forward to like partnering with more protocols and building more interesting integrations. So I guess flipping it back to you then, I know I mentioned we went to Mainnet in January. I know you guys went like to Mainnet fairly similar time. How has that been? How has your Mainnet launch been?
Yeah, that's been pretty exciting so far. Like we have like over 5,000 different users sign up to the platform. I think like definitely exciting developments are coming beyond Power Perpetuals. Like just trying to build something new in crypto. I think so far like been busy shipping with new features, like listening to users. And I think like this space has also like opened a lot of opportunities to work with other protocols. That's what we're trying to do as well at the moment. Just kind of what you guys are doing, like let's say with Flex, right? I think like adding squared Solana opens a lot of like new products like for protocols to build on top of and allow very different payouts or like stable returns, especially like when people are right now like interested in delta neutral returns. That's one other thing that you're building at the moment.
Yeah, it's super cool, and you guys are the first one on Solana at least to come out with that kind of Power Perp squared payoff. So maybe digging into that a little bit, we know you guys launched that very, very recently. Maybe tell us a bit more about what is Squared Sol, what are some of the use cases, and how would you kind of compare it or frame it in the framework of like traditional perps and options that we're used to seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess like the simple explanation is that imagine you have like your Solana at $100, then your squared Solana will be squared with that, meaning 100 times 100, $10,000. And like, why would someone do that? The simple explanation is like leverage. Obviously, like if Solana is at $100 and it 2x's, the squared Solana will 4x. And then like someone might ask like, why not just go like leveraged long, right? Like do 5x, 10x, like 100x. Like I'm sure you can find a platform to do that. And the answer is like lies that like Power Perpetuals like shares like some similar properties to the options, was that they provide convexity. And so let's say you went leveraged long, but you were wrong, you're more likely to get liquidated. Whereas like with squared products, like you actually don't get liquidated. You just like money is very, very slowly going to zero. Whilst with this like leveraged longs, like after like if you're 5x, like 20% down, you're liquidated, but like you can still hold your squared Solana position and wait until it bounces back. So that's like the core logic behind it. And I think like just like this type of product like allows like to also manipulate like the use of its funding, and because like obviously this product doesn't come for free. Like if you have something that like allows you to make more money on the upside and lose money on the downside, like obviously like, you need to pay some kind of a price, and that comes in the form of funding. So unlike like in perpetuals, like where funding is like pretty low, you actually might end up paying like a lot in funding for power perps. But at the same time, if you're shorting this product, like you're actually earning a lot of funding.
Yeah, that's really cool. There are a lot of really nice advantages, like you mentioned, obviously like the natural access to leverage through that kind of like parabolic payoff. Also like not having the kind of liquidation risk that you typically associate with leverage. And then I think the third point that's pretty cool as well, because it is that basically you don't have to roll, say, like an option. It's just kind of perpetual in a sense, which I think is obviously like a big advantage over having these expiring things that you have to go and manually manage a bit of a portfolio. And then the cool thing that you get out of it, obviously, is you're kind of long gamma in a sense, and you have this, inherent convexity, which I think is really nice and something that people typically look towards options to get like similar exposure. So I had a question for you then. Why squared? Why not, cubed Solana or any kind of these other kind of polynomial payoffs? What's so special about squared?
I mean, I think like you don't want to start like with cubic, because of like that stuff can get like so easily out of control. I think like it's definitely at some point like we might consider adding it. But you want to start smaller, and I think like squared like the first one that comes to mind in terms of like implementation, and the next one will be square root, because of like other interesting properties related to square root. I think like it's easier to hedge your like impermanent loss, let's say. And exactly. So I'm not saying that like you're not gonna add like cubic funding, cubic perps like at some point. Definitely something to consider in the future. But for now, like we just like want to test out this product. Right now it's like only at 1x leverage. Like we might like increase leverage there as well. Like so you can go 2x long in your squared Solana potentially. But the goal right now is like to figure out like is a product market fit with this product, who will be trading it, and how we can make it like the experience better, and how we can compose, especially with other protocols, using this product.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense as like a simple first product, and obviously I think like open, initially kind of chucking that out on Ethereum, so it makes a lot of sense. But then I guess there's like an almost infinite design space in terms of like the mathematical functions that you can use for these kinds of payoffs. You mentioned finding product market fit and kind of getting adoption for that. How's that been? Market makers, like I imagine they'd be pretty easily able to price stuff like this, given it's just like a simple function. How have you found that adoption so far since launching?
I think like one of the key things that we wanted to do is to find good liquidity for the product, and that's why we have 3 different market makers onboarding right now. Like it was like one of the other reasons like I decided like initially to do a closed launch, and especially only for our like trading circle users, like to try out the power perps, to test out the product and have a gradual release. But for us, like after talking like to different trading firms, like there's no like market making interest in this, but also like there's definitely a lot of taking interest, because of like you can just like buy power perps like whenever it's like out of a certain price range and hedge it with options, allowing you to like make some safe profits. I think like that's probably a lot of like exciting news like to some like Zeta markets like users, that they can actually like play around it and notice like that there are like pretty interesting ARB opportunities, like, and a lot more complex ones than let's say in perp markets, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. How would you envision like the composability going with options? What are some of like the interesting like combinations, I guess, that you guys have been thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for now, like you just like see like only initial steps, like where people would combine like short term, like look at the implied volatility, like what they can do by like buying power perps, like as simply like only one product. But later on, I think like as liquidity improves, as there's more buyers and sellers and funding gets in control, like I can imagine like building like pure vaults by combining options and Power Perpetuals into product and offering like some delta neutral exposure, essentially, similar to what like DOV products do in the future. Maybe you also like have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think delta neutral strategies are a kind of core part of options. You've got very ubiquitous kind of payoff structures like straddles and strangles, which basically give you this effectively like V-shaped payoff function where you're kind of betting on volatility as opposed to like the actual directional movement of the stock itself. So yeah, I definitely think with like the kind of convexity that you guys have, maybe there's some nice kind of integrations with options. I would definitely have to do a bit more like modeling and math to figure out like what's pretty cool. But I think it's such a new space that like there's definitely got to be some great opportunities out there. I guess the one thing that might be a little more challenging and that requires like a dynamic component or like a hedging component is because like ours are expiring and I guess your guys are perpetual, so we would have to think some way in which they can compose, or you have to like manage a portfolio. But yeah, something interesting to solve. I had a quick question just like on why you ended up moving to squared kind of Power Perpetuals. I know you guys started off with like Everlastings. What was the thought process there, and how come you guys moved to Power Perps?
I think like we are kind of like in that area trying to solve like the same problem. Is like how to build a product appealing to retail and removing all the complexities associated with options and make it more user friendly and package it in a form that's like pretty easy to use. I think like I tried like Zeta platform, like it's pretty great in that sense, like pretty intuitive to use. But for us, like it was also like considering and comparing like Everlastings and let's say Power Perps. Like which one is easier to explain to retail or explain to a new user who wants to try a product. And it clearly seemed like that Power Perpetuals have a lot less details around it, have a lot less like explanations to be done, because at the core of it, it's like really simple product where you just like need to take the price and square it.
Yeah.
And you pay funding for that, right? So in just like intuitive sense, it's like a lot simpler. But when it comes like to everlasting options, you have like actually a ton more things to explain. For example, like what is the strike price, like what's happening to it, like you need to figure out like when to discontinue the market or move the strike price. So just in general, we felt like starting out with Power Perps was like much better move, a lot easier to onboard new users into like the option space in general, right?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and that's probably like a really good move. I guess something from our side that we found is like options are like awesome and they have so much potential. But yeah, I think getting kind of the crowd around it and understanding like how they work and all the different kind of knobs and parameters in terms of strike prices, expiries, and the like, definitely like a bit of a challenge, and it's kind of like a problem we're working through. But yeah, I think it's all about kind of finding good products that kind of bundle it up in a nice way that gives people like the exposure that they want without kind of drowning them in the complexity.
Yeah, I guess like was wondering like how you guys like plan to approach it in the future in terms of like how do you, for example, like explain Greeks to users, like how to simplify that a huge part of option space.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess like small alpha leak in this kind of stuff, but yeah, definitely. I think it's like UX is pretty important. Like I'm sure if you've seen our front end, we try and focus a lot on that, kind of making a bit more Robinhood-esque as opposed to being more kind of Deribit-esque, which is like a glorified Excel spreadsheet. It feels like sometimes, and it's just like information overload and not very like, I think great in terms of some of like the design aspects. Like it is very good for pro traders in terms of getting all the information and being able to see every market that's out there. But I think for more casual users, it's like absolute sensory overload. In terms of Greeks, that's always been, I think, probably a bit of a sticking point. People see that with options and they're like, there's a lot of Greek numbers in there or Greek letters in there with all these different, risk exposures, and you've got partial differential equations, and it's all very confusing. So I think it's mostly just like starting simple there. I think just like delta is like a pretty understandable one, and it almost approximates like the probability of it finishing in the money, which I think is like a nice way to think about it, and probably something easy for people to conceptualize. Probably gamma is a bit more confusing, theta, time decay. and a bunch of others. So I don't know if we'd like dwell on that one too much. But yeah, Delta's a super useful one. And then in terms of, I think, simplifying options, we're also kind of potentially looking to look through for like more simplified products, I guess, stuff that you can kind of trade that kind of, packages these options payoffs, and then people can kind of do these one-click strategies in a sense. That's kind of the direction we've been taking with vaults, which is maybe a nice segue after this. We're working with some of the teams out there like Katana, Ribbon, and a bunch of others on basically doing like automated covered call selling, automated put selling, and then I guess in future there's going to be a bunch more interesting payoffs. So people can treat it almost like yield farming. You kind of, I guess, put your capital in this automated strategy. It goes and invests it on your behalf, doing all the kind of complex option stuff under the hood. They do the strike selection. They do the rolling of options every week. So it takes off all, I think, the operational overhead that the user would otherwise need to do. And then you kind of just earn the returns from that, which I think is like a pretty nice model that Ribbon pioneered.
I think like what also kind of be great, like, is to dive into like all of, like you briefly mentioned that is that like you're working with Katana and you're working with a bunch of protocols as well. In terms of like, how do you see the future like there to evolve? In terms of like you're right now, like you mentioned, working on different products, like trying to bring it, and that means that a bunch of other protocols can like start more and more option vaults and just like derivative vaults, like we can call them, right? And composing on top of it, providing like a new type of yield, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a super interesting space and something that's only coming to the forefront. Like kind of now, we've obviously had a few years of, I think, yield farming, probably starting with like, Yearn and then a bunch of its kind of follower products. And now it's just become like this big play in the DeFi space. But I think what kind of plagues it in a sense is a lot of it is just like printing token emissions, like pool twos, stuff like that, which is maybe like not the most sustainable yield. And then I think the way that people have been framing this option stuff, which is really cool, is like you're actually selling like a proper financial product and a derivative with some kind of exposure to this like counterparty, and so it's not just kind of like creating tokens and selling them out of thin air. So this is pretty cool, and people I think still getting their head around it. It's like a very new primitive, but I think very exciting. You've only got like a handful of vault projects out there. I guess it's like becoming quite a few now, but if you were to look at the space a couple of months ago, there was close to nothing that existed, and it's just been this like big Cambrian explosion. And so currently everyone's mostly, I think, focusing on the covered call and put selling space, but I think there's really like a almost infinite amount of different payoffs and structures you can do. Obviously these kind of like long volatility products are pretty interesting. And then you've got like a bunch of other nice payoffs. Currently it's all kind of option selling, I guess, to earn yield, but there's potential like option buying strategies, depending on if we can get people to take the other side. But yeah, I think it's really a process of experimentation. I mean, we're kind of working pretty closely with a bunch of these vault projects, and we have this kind of universal infrastructure for vaults called Zeta Flex, which is named after, I guess, flex options being these kind of flexible parameterized options. You can kind of choose any strike, you can choose any expiry, you can fully customize it. Whereas our DEX, obviously it's like standardized, so you actually have proper liquidity. This one, anyone can kind of create some like customized contract, and then they can kind of sell it almost like OTC or via an option to say a market maker. So it really allows people to do it in this kind of permissionless way and like literally sell any kind of customized option payoff that they want, which we think is really cool. And then I think giving that tooling out to people, vault operators can then, go and really customize what kind of payoffs they want, optimize, I guess the kind of yield numbers that they want for their users based on the strikes. And then kind of, yeah, that's pretty much the tools that we're giving people.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, yeah, I definitely like super excited about like all of the upcoming integrations in the vault space. I think like we saw like last year a ton of simple option call put vaults emerge, and I think it meant like literally like there's a need for more competition in the space beyond just simple calls and puts, and like that leads like to the need of like more complex derivatives with better payoffs, with different payout structures, etc. And especially in the markets that we're at right now, people are a lot more interested in a product like this, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And it's still in the early stages where we're still kind of sticking with these like very simple, I think, vanilla option payoffs. But you've obviously seen a couple of teams moving into the space now, doing exotic derivatives and starting to get into quite funky stuff that I think gives like really interesting exposures. And I think this can definitely be wrapped up in some like really nice user-facing products that people can get like awesome exposure to. And I think there are just like a lot of possibilities if that kind of complexity can be somewhat abstracted through the vault and like the rolling mechanism is kind of taken care of. I definitely see it as like it's going to be something that's like a really popular product, and you're going to log into some of these, front ends, and you're going to have almost this like menu of different derivatives payoffs. And rather than having to like, I don't know, call up a broker or go through like a really like annoying process of trying to get exposure to these different options, you can kind of just like very easily like log in there and pretty much like, choose or customize whatever you want your kind of derivative payoff to be.
Yeah, totally. I guess like for on our end, like we're planning like to release like also like a vault, potentially like with a few protocols, taking advantage of like power perps, like especially like bear craft strategy, was initially coined by what is called a SQUOL and like open team, right? And I think like the simplest like way to use like power perps in general like is like go short on a power perp and just go long on perps. And I think that's like the simplest one, but like you said, like I think like there's like a space like for more complex derivatives like coming up, and I think like even with your team, like we briefly mentioned, like potential like to do like let's say variance swap using options and power perps, which I think like is really like brings like really new products into the space and adds a lot more adds complexity, but also like makes the yield a bit safer and not like reliant on like simple like probability of like option as like calls puts expiring in outside of the money, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm very excited to see the vaults that come out on kind of the Power Perpetuals that you guys are building. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, like variance swaps and some of those other products could be like a feasible thing that we can partner up on. So pretty excited for that.
Yeah, cool. Exactly.
Great. Yeah, I might, because I know we're almost at time, I might kind of start closing it out and with some of like the final questions, which are more, I guess, broad. So for people who want to get involved in 01, kind of what's the way to start trading? I know you guys had like a bit of an NFT gated launch. How does that work exactly?
Yeah, so initially like we released like people can still trade on 01 like regular perpetuals and also just like borrow land, but we opened our power perps to NFT holders like of our community. So far, like those NFTs are like given away daily to whoever reached like 1.5k trading volume in total. But also like we are doing like multiple giveaways like with different protocols. You might have seen the QR codes floating around in your feed. And we plan to do more of these, and like within next like week, like we'll open up like the platform to everyone to use, and open like SQUOLs like for everyone, and then we'll work on next updates. I think like in more products, right? But if you're curious like to learn more, like get the information firsthand, you should definitely come visit our Discord and join the community to learn more and be the first one to hear.
Yeah, awesome. I really like the way that you guys have somewhat gamified and have these like milestones, I guess, for trading. That's really cool, and how you guys have done this launch. So yeah, definitely, I'm pretty keen to get on the kind of SQUOL trading and give it a crack. Should be really interesting. And then on our side, yeah, obviously you can trade on exchange, mainnet.zeta.markets. Everything's kind of there. And then also you can kind of go through some of our like partner vault protocols, so like Katana, Ribbon, and a few more that are soon to launch, and kind of go for more of a kind of passive investing strategy there. All right. In terms of like, yeah, final questions, what's your general sentiment for the markets right now? What's your outlook for DeFi going forwards?
I think I kind of agree with what you were saying about all the Ponzi yields. It kind of like right now, people are not looking for something that they expect to accrue value like very much long term, but rather look for real returns in terms of cash. So to me, it seems like a lot of DeFi, which was based on emissions, heavily relied on tokens, is kind of like doomed right now, at least for like next weeks or month, like who knows. But I think like it means that a lot of builders in this space who are focusing on building out like more financial derivatives, financial tools, who rely on like actual utility, are gonna like come out on top. And I think like we already see this happening, especially in Solana space, so that like most of the protocols who are doing well today are actually like those like option vaults, right? And just because like they are kind of like indifferent to the market, in some ways, like because like they are not like giving you tokens, which you expect like to accrue in value, but rather like selling products. And I think like because of that, like a lot more protocols will be coming into the space like with the same ideas of trying to find like real returns. I think like Maple and Solana could be also huge, right? Because they're literally offering under collateralized loans and really returns to the users. And yeah, just like excited to see all of this type of protocols come out.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I know we're in like what feels like a little bit of a mini bear market, which doesn't feel incredible, but it's definitely like a good time to build. Like I haven't been checking the charts too much and just been like heads down trying to pump out product, which is I think the way to go. And then yeah, I would agree with your sentiment that like the cool thing about building derivatives is it's very much like, you know, not just like a single directional bet. You're not just like, you know, long only 100x kind of perps. It's like you're thinking about, you know, shorting as well. You're also thinking a lot about delta neutral strategies, which I feel like are not really appreciated in the space at all. It's either you short the shit out of something or you go like super bulls long. So I think that'll be really cool. So I'm definitely excited for that. So even in a bear market, hopefully people are trading and making money. And it's probably going to be a bit tougher for some of these like yield generation protocols that are just kind of like printing native tokens and doing other stuff like that. Even like lending and borrowing, probably like a little bit less attractive these days just because like people are taking on less leverage and needing to borrow less. So yeah, I'm definitely still excited. And the thing for me is like looking at TVLs, they've still, I think, remained strong and haven't just kind of like dropped or anything. So I'm still pretty like bullish on the DeFi space, even though a lot of the hype these days has been going towards like, you know, NFTs and gaming and all this like metaverse stuff. I think DeFi is still, you know, probably crypto's strongest use case.
Yeah, sure, definitely agree. I mean, I think like DeFi is here is to stay, even like it was metaverse gaming. Like I'm sure like probably like 90% of DeFi can go to zero, or like compared like to metaverse stuff, like 99% go to zero. But a lot of the infrastructure that it's being built on like can serve like as Lego blocks in the future for a lot of new applications to be built on top.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely need to launch like index products, have like a DeFi index and probably a gaming index, and go long one, go short one. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how
is it going to be like a spread trade? Like you can open a perpetuals index on that.
Yeah, that's right.
We should just like ask Pip to come up with an oracle.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, nice. All right, thanks. I didn't want to take up any more of anyone's time, but thanks to all the listeners for tuning in, and thanks Stratos and 01 for coming on the space. Super excited to see you guys launch. So definitely go and try out the product. And yeah, looking forward to kind of collaborating together in future.
Yeah, likewise. I think like there should be a lot of opportunities. If your options are not doing well on Zeta, might try to hedge with Powers or vice versa.
Yeah, we'll definitely make something work. Yeah, awesome. Thank you everyone for your time, and catch you on the flip side. See ya.